Good afternoon, everybody. It's a big pleasure to be here. I've already been introduced. I'm been here now for 18 months in Poland, and it's particularly nice to be in Poznan for Impact and to have the chance to speak to the leading boss of the leading company in this great city, Allegro. So, Roy, pleasure to have this opportunity. You're an American, but you've been working in, across Europe in retail, as was made clear. Perhaps my first question is, you know, the buzzword here and everywhere is artificial intelligence. This morning, I was listening to Google explaining how AI is going to completely change the way science is being done. We have people like Elon Musk telling us that in 5 years, only about 5% of what will be done on this planet will still be biological, i.e. not linked to AI. So my question is for you and for Allegro, is AI a revolution or an evolution?
Well, I think the first thing in this is, first of all, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for hosting me. And I would say that I think it would be fair to say that there have always been buzzwords, and the current buzzword is AI. 20 or 30 years ago, it was the internet. And I think at the time, people were expecting the internet apocalypse or versus the internet nothing, and it turned out that we're all still here, and we're all still doing fairly well. And yes, a few things have changed, but actually most things haven't changed that much. And I think that's going to be true about artificial intelligence as well. There are people that are predicting the apocalypse once again, Mr. Musk being the most prominent of those. And there are others, particularly in the investment community, who can't talk about it and ask questions enough about it. My personal view is it's another tool. And like all tools, there are going to be useful solutions and controversial solutions, and there are going to be some also unsuccessful ones. But it's still just a tool that makes us more effective, but we're still having to use the tool. There still have to be hands on those tools. In our case, we use it for rather prosaic things. As some of you may follow, we're making some substantial progress in investing and expanding into new languages. And when you have as many millions of stock-keeping units to describe as we do, being really efficient in translating those at something less than what Google charges us is an attractive thing. And so we have data scientists that are involved in the rather arcane algorithms that translate Polish to Czech or Polish to Slovakian or English to any number of those languages. We use it also to identify possible counterfeit items that we unintentionally have listed on our product. And in fact, the developments we've had there enabled us to delist no less than 2 million questionable SKUs in the course of last year. So it's a tool. I think these are very sort of concrete examples of things. A third one is semantic search and actually enabling consumers to search products much more effectively than what we've been accustomed to in some of the sites that have been around for a while. All very useful things. None of those, I think, are going to take us to the apocalypse and hopefully will lead to more trusting and more effective shopping experiences on our marketplaces across Europe.
Well, thank you very much. We're here in the EU, and the EU prides itself on being the lead regulator on actually most things, but including AI now. And of course, it has already put in place lots of legislation, including the Digital Market Act, to try to create a level playing field. It has also fined companies like Google billions for breaching some of its competition rules. What is your feeling? Are regulators able to keep up with the pace of technological change? Or are they one step behind and now going to be 3 steps behind as AI ramps up the change?
Well, there's the question of whether the regulators can keep up with the rate of change, and there may be another question about whether we can keep up with the rate of regulation in the coding changes that we need to do. I think we're very fortunate in Europe, probably more so than in any other large region around the world, where customers are really, I think, quite effectively protected for a myriad of potential risks. And I think also there's been considerable work to make sure that the playing field, no matter how big or how small we are, we're able to actually compete in something that approximates a fair chance. So that's wonderful. I think the reverse side of that is if you think about, Dave Roberts, our CTO, is not here at the moment, but if he were here, he would say roughly about 1/5, maybe a little bit more, of all our development resources are actually invested in making software changes to comply to all of that legislation. So I certainly hope we don't accelerate the rate of change, just because I think particularly smaller businesses like ourselves on the European scale, despite the fact that we're one of Europe's, if not Europe's largest native marketplace, certainly very close to that, but we're still quite small relative to the size of compliance work that we need to do. And I'd say also we're not really seen as a pan-European player, and that means that there tend to be 2 sets of larger, mostly American firms that are influencing the discussion about what that legislation looks like in Brussels, and of course also have the wherewithal to comply to that influenced compliance when it comes to, in fact, I think less so than to some of us who are a bit smaller.
You joined and took charge of Allegro 2 years ago as the company was about to get bigger and look outside its home market. So we had Allegro now already in place in the Czech Republic, and as of this year you have a self-standing operation in Slovakia as well. Is it the case that you can replicate a winning model, the model that you have in Poland, and just almost copy-paste it to another market? Or do you really have to go local and do things differently to adjust to the customers and the expectations of the retail experience in each market?
Well, I certainly hope to start. We make best efforts to replicate the shopping experience as well as we can within the new constraints of a new country. Replicate the shopping experience that we enjoy here in Poland. Naturally, there are a few things that take a bit longer to make, and some of the needs are different. There's different language, there's different currency, there are different ways to get products to customers, and we have to make all those adjustments. But I also think we need to be very attentive to how customers react, and they sometimes surprise us. So we can't always predict of how they're going to receive the way we search or the way we navigate within the site or the way we check out.
Can you share a surprise, for example, that you've had?
Fortunately, there haven't been huge numbers of big surprises right now. I think we got some fairly clear input that despite the fact that we made a substantial investment to translate as well as we possibly could, we didn't always get it right. I think we got it right, then I think what the next best alternative wouldn't be, but sometimes...
So that's bad for AI, not for you?
Well, it means that, like all things, you can always get better, and with some encouragement we are. I think the other thing that we did is of course, we don't plan just to stay in the Czech Republic. We launched earlier this year also in Slovakia, and you know, we made a fairly good, big investment to move into the Czech Republic, somewhere around 30 million zloty, and it's less than 1/5 of that investment to go into the Slovakia. So we're learning also how to be more efficient in the initial entry so that we can actually spend more time adjusting the model and learning from how customers interact when we go into a new country. So more on this topic, I suspect, even this year.
So it means you could basically go further in your footprint quite quickly from here?
We certainly have bought that option. And I think part of it also depends on how quickly we can develop our presence in the new countries we go. And we're very, very happy with the reception we've had in the Czech Republic. There are 10.5 people in the Czech Republic. I would describe that normally as 3 Warsaws. And 15% of everyone who lives in the country has already shopped with us at least once. And I think we can be very proud of that result. Of course, what is now especially important is that after they've tried us once, they're interested in trying shopping with us a second, third, and hopefully 5th and 6th time.
There's a lot of focus now on big tech, Silicon Valley, its impact on the e-commerce market and more broadly. Are we sort of missing the elephant in the room? Is China managing to basically avoid the attention that it probably deserves? We all remember that when China joined the WTO, the expectation was it would embrace the trade rules that Western nations liked. It's not quite lived up to that. What is the situation from your perspective?
You know, when I was a kid, I was taught there are 2 types of elephants. They're the African ones and they're Indian ones. In our particular world, they're the American ones and the Chinese ones, and they both have different characteristics. I think clearly, you know, if you think about the most relevant e-commerce players across the region of Europe, they're almost exclusively American, and they have a tremendous influence, particularly in Brussels, in shaping legislation and shaping the discussion. And I suppose that's also understandable, given the fact that there's some of the, as Europe, the European Union is an multinational European organization, they are as well, and they can speak on that level. The Chinese seem to have a different approach, and I think eventually that will change. But the current approach is just ignore most regulations and see how far you can go. And I think in the case of Shein recently, they've been identified as now a very large online player and is subject to other legislation that they weren't subject to before, and I suspect that will expand to some of the other Chinese players over time. But I'd say, whereas one set is actually trying to set and influence the legislation, the other is actually, up till now, is only slowly and gradually learning to comply to the legislation that the rest of us follow.
And when you say that you expect change from the Chinese, will that change be voluntary, or will it be through sanctions, fines, trade barriers, God knows what?
We don't know. I suspect it may be a learning process, starting in one end of that spectrum and finishing up on the other side.
Actually, as a home player, as it were, as a company from the EU, is there anything that you think regulators should do to promote companies like yours? European politicians are always talking about the need to have the self-sustained industry and economy within the EU.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great if there are a number of European online businesses that eventually reach the scale of some of the ones that are currently working across Europe. And I don't think we're there yet. I think at the moment, the best way to do that is work with organizations of similar platforms. In our case, that's the EUTA, the European Tech Alliance, and use voices like that to, if you will, hold the conversation and create the conversations that affect all of us across Europe, whereas as individual businesses, we're still not big enough to do that. I think that's the first attempt. And, you know, Allegro is probably at this point the largest native marketplace, and hopefully our colleagues in other marketplaces will also continue to grow to make the field of competition more diverse.
Well, we wish you and Allegro a lot of luck, and thank you so much for your insightful comments and time. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.